Good morning. My name is Ellen Stevens Newton, and this is the first show, Relatively Speaking. It's a show connecting the past to the present, and my main focus is on Boothbay region families. That include Southport, East Boothbay, Boothbay Harbor, Edgecombe, Newcastle, and Damariscotta as well. And the process is that I take people that live and have families here in the region and follow their lines back to at least the immigrant ancestor. But the main goal for me is to show people how connected they are to their neighbors and other members of this community. It's very important for me to think about keeping a connection within the community members and helping the future members of this community find out who their ancestors are, where they came from, and how they came to be here in this region. Genealogy is a lifelong hobby of mine. I love it. I was introduced to it by my father, James Stevens, and have been actually recording history for me for the past 58 years. And the show was the only way that I could find to be able to notify people that I'm here and I'm working on this project, and am in hopes of encouraging those of you that are interested in genealogy to join me in this project. And I'm hoping through future shows to interview more people and find out what they've been doing as far as genealogy is concerned, and how we can combine what I have for research and what they have to make it much more complete, and to share stories about people in this community. My first guest today is Diane Randlett, and maiden name Spofford, and she has been interested in genealogy for quite some time and has been doing a lot of research, and I'm very fortunate to have her with me to be able to share what she has and to combine the findings that we have to make it a much more complete family history on the Spofford and DaCosta families and all of those collateral families in her line. So Diane, thanks and welcome for being here. I'm curious as to how you got interested in genealogy.
Thank you for having me, and I think this is a great project that you have. My grandmother, my mother's mother, she didn't really watch a lot of television, and she kept track of all of her ancestors, and I would visit her and we would sit at the table and drink tea and talk about ancestors.
Oh, it's wonderful. And so when did you first begin to record and research yourself?
Probably when I was looking to get into the Daughters of the American Revolution, because my grandmother had always told me that I would be able to do that quite easily. So then I started, and DAR at the national level requires that you get birth, death, marriage certificates, and so that requires a lot of research.
Mm-hmm. And you were successful in getting into the DAR?
I was, and I had a wonderful historian with the DAR that helped me expedite everything too.
Perfect. So who were your parents?
Gordon and Marie Spofford.
Okay. And Gordon Spofford, I know he and his brother Ronald had a garage here in town, and I know that you have cousins that live here now, and but you've gone way beyond the local family and done history into them. And can you tell me what's the hardest ancestor that you've worked on? Meaning, what's your big roadblock?
Right now is Prudence Gary, who would have been my great-grandfather's grandmother, I guess. You have it down here in this, Prudence Day is her name, and she married James Gary, And I'm pretty sure that she goes back to David Day, who was one of the very first Days in this area. He had a brother, I think, that was involved in the Keniston house. So that's very old.
Very old. And do you know how he was involved in the Keniston house?
Well, his brother married the widow of the man who he and his wife started the Keniston house, and Samuel Day, I believe, married her when her husband died.
Okay. And so your mother, her maiden name was?
DaCosta.
DaCosta. And are there still DaCosta family members here?
Oh, yes.
And they are?
Yes, Randy and Rodney DaCosta.
Randy and Rodney DaCosta. And you've been able to research the DaCosta family?
I have.
And do you know how far back you've been able to go?
Well, Isaac, who came into Boston in the late 1600s, I think, he was called the Marquis Isaac DaCosta, and apparently was a Marquis in France to Louis XIV. I'm not exactly sure what that means. They were land barons, they were guards of the king, maybe? I don't know.
They were also French Huguenot family, and the family, that, as far as I've researched it, Anthony came here to this country because of religious persecution, and actually had spent some time in Holland, where the pilgrims, if you will, where the people that came on the Mayflower, that's where they met and gathered together and made the decision, we're going to go to the New World and start a life there that free of religious persecution. So I have some pedigree charts here, but one of the things that is always interesting to me is, where do you go to find, or where did you go to find?
So I have access to books on various families, but not all of them, of course. And then the internet, of course, broke everything out. I mean, you were able to contact various companies, but Find a Grave was a really great one, because you could take your ancestor and then you could go to his father and then his father and so on. But I think that Ancestry.com has purchased that. At least that's what I've been told. So sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not, as you found out yourself.
Right. It is very difficult, and Find a Grave, unfortunately, is not recognized as a source for using to join DAR or Sons of the American Revolution, the Mayflower Society, because the information on Find a Grave is simply handwritten by people who wander around in graveyards and take notes and add it to their family tree, but lacking any other way to find those hints that are crucial as to where your ancestor came from. You have to rely on things like that, and then you have to go and do the research yourself to see and finding corroborating information. So it is a very time-consuming hobby, if you will, but it is also very rewarding when you find the things that your ancestors have gone through, and they are recorded in the strangest of ways, little scraps of paper that have survived hundreds of years and have been duplicated, and that information saved is just one of the many ways that we are able to trace our ancestry. So how do you record your information? How do you save your information?
I have a lot of these memo books that I do, and sometimes 3-ring binders. I have a lot of those.
Yeah. And so a majority of your work is done by hand?
Yeah.
Is handwritten?
Yeah, it doesn't come as formal as this pedigree chart.
Right, okay, all right. So what I did when recording some of your ancestry and trying to follow your line, for me it's easier by taking this information and putting it into what's called a pedigree chart. And fortunately or unfortunately, however you look at it, it's the same as the pedigree for a dog or a horse or any kind of record keeping. So the first one that we have is for Gordon Carroll Spofford, who is your dad, and it lists his family, Dewey and his mother Eleanor Greenleaf, and with the Greenleaf side now, we're already now mingling with other families within the community. The Spofford family, Gordon and his dad and great-grandfather were all from this region, and they, in marrying, introduced you to other families such as the Greenleaf family, the Barter family, the Gary family, and the Barter family is an extraordinarily big family, and the Greenleaf family smaller. But when you go back generations, the Greenleaf family is a very large family that originated here, but originated on Westport Island as far as coming here and then spread further. The interesting thing about genealogy is that each time you go back a generation, you double the number of people that you're looking for. And so by the time you make it to, from the first generation to the fifth generation, you're looking for 31 different people. And then all of a sudden it's 62, and it goes on and on and on. And it is an incredibly arduous task to perform, but it is very rewarding. So let's take a look at some of your family members here. So here we have George Freeman Greenleaf, and he's the son of Silas Greenleaf and Mary Jane Pinkham. And the Pinkham, of course, is a huge family in this area. And are there any other people that, or family members within the first 5 generations of your family that are notable to you or stand out?
Silas Arthur Greenleaf was a sea captain in Marblehead. Mm-hmm. And he had 4 daughters, and he had a son and a daughter here. So, but he was a sea captain for the Milliken family, the Hood Milk Company. They would have yachts, and he would be their yacht captain. Mm-hmm. And they would send he and his family to Blue Hill and pay for their whole summer activities as long as he was their yacht captain. So he had quite a life, and he was kind of conscripted by the Navy during World War II, I guess, or I don't know, 1 or 2, to monitor the harbor at Marblehead with a Navy boat. So I'm not exactly sure the details, but I know that was one thing.
Mm-hmm. Are there any other people that are in your family on your dad's side that are remarkable to you or were difficult for you to find?
The name was Bartow, and it went back to Cape Porpoise in near Kennebunk, or in Kennebunk. And that relative was beheaded or killed by Indians with another man named Henry Fitz. Mm-hmm. I can't seem to find a whole lot about him.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'd like to switch now to your mother's line, Marie Elaine DaCosta. And I find it very interesting because DaCosta is obviously not an English name, and turns out that it's French, as you said. And of course there are several different spellings, as time goes by, people change things. I think it's interesting because my children tell me I have a terrible Maine accent, and so even though I say DaCosta talking about your great-great-grandfather, he spelled it with an ER, and I still pronounce it with an A, regardless of whether it's ER or not. So I'm safe in saying DaCosta. So it's very interesting to me to trace her line back, and we went back to Anthony, and records get a little sketchy back in the 1600s, but the New England Historic and Genealogic Society has a lot of information about that family, and in their register book they did a tremendous amount of research on Isaac, who was supposedly Anthony's dad, and subsequent children. But you have on your dad's side 3 men named Artemus Spofford, and on, Amherst Spofford, sorry. But on your mother's side of the family, she has 3 Jacob DaCostas in a row. And so figuring out who's Jacob, and then of course, one Jacob had a brother named Jacob who had a son named Jacob. So then now they were talking about 10 Jacob DaCostas, all in different generations. And it's actually quite an interesting process to follow them. So one of the things that I had done is, with this pedigree chart, this particular chart carries out the DaCosta family and the subsequent lines. For instance, Edward William DaCosta, who is your grandfather, married Esther Lillian Pratt, and she has an entire line herself through the Pratts. However, the DaCosta line is what we'll concentrate on today. This ancestor, George DaCosta, was born in 1804 and married a gal named Harriet Bicknell. And this George DaCosta here in 1804, he was the son of Jacob DaCosta the first. Jacob DaCosta the second was his grandfather. His great-grandfather was Jacob DaCosta, and then to Andrew. However, Jacob DaCosta the second married Priscilla Rogers, and Priscilla Rogers takes you back to the Mayflower through her mother, Hannah Bartlett, and Hannah Bartlett goes back through Samuel Bartlett to Joseph, and then Robert Bartlett, and then to Mary Warren. And Mary Warren is the daughter of Richard Warren and Elizabeth Walker. There are multiple lines for you that go back to the Mayflower. However, that was probably the most interesting for me. I too am descended from Richard Warren. So one of the other projects that I've done is I have this format, which is a family group format, and each page records a particular family with their children, and my goal is to have you take a look at this and review this and fill in what information you have, and then we compare the notes and decide we need to do more research here, or I have this, we have enough proof that we're going to be able to handle this without any difficulty and prove that line. So I have that for you, as well as for this is your mother's family, and this is your dad's family, and I'm interested in sharing this with you, and perhaps you'll find that this is an easy way to keep notes, easier than actually in your notebooks. But one of the things I'm interested in is the Maxim family that you have traced your line to, and I would like you to tell me about the Maxim family. I noticed that you had brought some books that
Yeah, my grandmother was my great grandmother's was on my mother's side was Angie Louise Turner, but her mother was Maria Louisa Maxim, and she would have been a pretty close cousin to Hiram Maxim, who is notorious for inventing the machine gun, but he was an inventor, and he invented from the time he was 6 or 8 years old, and he was knighted by the Queen. He's one of 2 people in Sangerville, Maine, who's knighted by the Queen. He lived most of his life in England, and he invented the light bulb before Thomas Edison. And, you know, there is documentation that Thomas Edison paid him $20,000 a year to live in England so that he wouldn't invent anything more with electricity or with the light bulb. So I just brought the book just to show, you know, pictures of him. And I don't even know if there's a picture here, but the cover of the book shows after he was knighted.
This is The Amazing Hiram Maxim, an intimate biography by Arthur Hockey.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes, and my line goes back to like my great-great-grandmother, Maria Louisa Maxim, Hooper Turner. She had a first family that 2 of them were inventors as well, and they invented things to help the shoe industry in Massachusetts.
Really?
They had patents. One of my cousins, I think, has the actual patents. And the sad thing about my grandmother, Louise Maxim, is what she called herself, was that her first husband, James Hooper, decided to go into the Civil War, just before the war ended, and he died. Ugh. And she was carrying a child, and she had 4 children at home. And so she was living on his pension of $23 a month, and she couldn't take care of her children. So she had to farm them out to relatives, and she gave away her son that she was carrying even. And then she married Ben Turner and had a set of twins, and I'm a descendant of the twins. But the son that she was carrying was George Hooper Merrill, who was a band leader for John Philip Sousa in the Navy. Oh. So a very interesting family.
Right. Incredible. So do you remember how you got into finding the Maxim family? Was it just through going through the process of find a grave? And
they were very, very proud of their heritage. They didn't do a lot of TV, a lot of radio, or anything like that. So yeah. This was a way that they passed down to the generations, that information.
Excellent, excellent. Are your children interested in genealogy at all?
To a certain extent, but another thing that's always said is that there's usually just one in every generation that will carry that information.
Exactly. Now you have a sister, Tammy.
I do.
And is she interested at all in genealogy?
Her eyes glaze over after about 2 minutes of me talking about it, but
yeah,
I think that everybody's interested. They just don't want it. They're busy.
Yeah,
they have things to do.
It is a very time-consuming hobby, as I mentioned. I remember when I first introduced my husband to genealogy, he was very interested for probably about 10 minutes. And then, as you say, there's a way that their eyes glaze over, and you know exactly that you've really overstepped your bounds as far as time with dead people is concerned. So, but I find it fascinating, and the fun part about it is they don't argue with you, the dead people. They just sit where you put them, and they stay there quietly, which is fun. But are you aware of the extended families that you have in the Greenleafs? You know Bobby and Albert Greenleaf?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
For sure.
And so, I don't know, you're younger than Bobby and Albert and I, but you're aware of them, and I'm hoping that people have a sense of belonging And do you find that you have that sense of belonging in the community?
Right. Well, Albert passed in the last couple of years, and he was very interested in the genealogy because this Greenleaf family goes back to Tristram Coffin,
Right.
who settled on Nantucket and had a whaling family. And then also it goes back to St. Malo's, France, where they were Filoverts. That was their name. It meant green leaf.
Right.
So they were French as well, and they were definitely French Huguenots. And, you know, everybody is interested in that. They want to know, where did my family come from? But they're not interested in the details, maybe.
Yeah, dates of birth and that. Yeah, I know. So tell me, have you traced many lines back to into foreign countries?
Yeah, I find that predominantly they're English.
Okay.
The Da Costa, it's iffy whether it's Portuguese or English. And territories were different, you know, before the Norman conquest and after the Norman conquest, and all of the different wars, the Visigoths. You know, you can get into a lot of trouble there. Exactly.
And one of the interesting things that I find is every time I start researching, especially a new family, I find myself running down rabbit holes that I didn't intend to. And do you find that that's true with you too?
Oh, yeah, because you go back to the name and you want to follow that name all the way back, but then they're married, and so you'd really like to know, well, how did I get to that? And then in some of these programs, they'll say at the end, you're 8 degrees removed from, in my case, Anne Boleyn.
Exactly.
I mean, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
And my son said, I didn't even know she had any children.
King Henry's time, exactly. It is interesting when you find yourself going through things like that and finding out I am an 8th cousin to Diana Spencer, who is obviously the mother of Harry and William. And although obviously there's no family resemblance, it is interesting to me. But I also am, I've done my DNA and I have Viking genes in me. And I come from northern countries, the Scandinavian countries and Ireland, Scotland, England. And so have you done your DNA?
No, I was hesitant to do that.
Yeah. A lot of people are, but I do find that it's interesting to be able to pinpoint and confirm at times exactly where you came from in Europe, and then what their travel route was to get me to Boothbay. So it is interesting. But with your genealogy, you found, as you said, this Prudence Gary is very difficult to prove where she came from. But are there other people that you haven't done yet, haven't had time to do?
Again, the wives of the predominant names.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the women in our history and in our families were not well documented, and serves as proof that women in the past were there for childbearing and taking care of the family and the household. However, there are some pretty strong women out there that have done a lot without a lot of fanfare. I'm always interested. There's one woman who fascinates me that I've been researching. Her husband was a lighthouse keeper on Damascove Island, and she had 4 children, and 2 of whom were born, one in January, one in February, on Damascove Island in the 1800s, and I can't think of a more dismal thing to try to go through. But she did it and raised a family and has descendants still living that probably don't even know anything about her. So it's nice to sort of shine the light on these people as we find them. So
yes.
Anyway, Diane, I'm thrilled that you were able to join me. I think it's been very enlightening for me to work with you and to find that we had a lot of information that we had gathered individually, but it is compared to, when comparing it, it's exactly the same. And I'm hoping that in the future we'll be able to share more information. I know I have information that I'd like to share with you. And I'd like to extend an invitation to you anytime. I have a huge library, and I belong to several organizations that allow me to use the internet to access their libraries. So anytime that you are interested, I would be more than interested in having you come and share that with me.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Super.
So I want to thank Diane. I want to thank you for watching, and I'm hoping that you are, at least interest has been piqued so that you may take on or are willing to share your genealogic findings with me. I am hoping that this show will be a monthly show, and that I will have new people on with new family members, and we will find those members of your family and my family, then interconnect, and we start building this community of ancestors together. This is Ellen Stevens Newton signing off from Relatively Speaking, connecting the past to the present through genealogic research.